Today's episode is brought to you by Dr. Jeffrey Halstead, DMD. Dr. Jeffrey Halstead has been Canandaigua's hometown dentist for more than 35 years, offering routine dental care as well as cosmetic dentistry, implants, and dentures by their highly trained and experienced staff. Visit them online at canandaiguadentistry.com or find them on Facebook and Instagram. Today, we continue our series previewing local elections across the region by catching up with one of the candidates running for Ontario County Coroner. Tom Cheney joins me via Zoom. Tom, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me this morning. I appreciate it.
So let's start with the easy question. Why are you running for County Coroner?
Yeah, so I'm running for County Coroner this year. So kind of give you a little backstory. We have a funeral home here in FLX, the Cheney Funeral Home. For the past 10 years since I've been here with my dad, we've been doing the county coroner removals. So anytime there's an unattended death in the county that requires an autopsy to be done, we go out. We've been working with the coroners doing the transports to Geneva General for an autopsy or up to the Monroe County Medical Examiners. And we've been doing it so long, we've been kind of seeing what's going on. And I finally said to myself that if I'm going to be coming out here as much as I am, then I'd like to run to be coroner. So just want to be there for the families of the county. I think that they deserve it. They need to have somebody there for them, and not only the families, but for the deceased to help them. And one of the last times they're ever going to need help as well.
What your experience is a bit different than some of the others running.
Yes.
Why is that? Why do you think that makes you best fit to take on this next challenge?
Having gone out and been doing the coroner removals, you kind of see what goes on and what doesn't go on, in those cases. The coroner cases don't really, people in the county don't really think a lot about them, right? Because let's be honest, about 80% of the people in our county probably will never have to deal with the coroner. But for that 20% that do have to, that do unfortunately have to deal with a coroner, it's important for somebody to be there for them. It's important for someone to be there to help kind of guide them through what's going on, what steps they should be taking, and how to proceed. Because a lot of times, again, the coroner, it's very unexpected. It's not somebody that's been, at home on hospice that they're the end is in the foreseeable future. It's they come home from work, they find, their loved one passed, and it's kind of, they go into shock, and so for me, it's, we've seen it too often where, I don't want to say that the coroner system, in Ontario County has failed, but the coroners need to be on scene. And for me, it's I want to be there. I want to be there for the families. I want to be there to help them through, the process of what to do next, what to expect. And like I said, it's somebody needs to be there for the deceased. It's, it's one of them things where when somebody passes, they're never going to need a doctor again. They're never going to need their parents again. You're really helping them through that last time they're ever going to really need help. And it'll be the greatest honor to be able to help them through that.
What are the biggest issues that you're hearing about from voters as you talk to different folks throughout Ontario County?
Well, it's kind of funny. So a lot of, most of the people that I talk to, when I tell them that I'm running for coroner, they kind of give me the look like, oh, A, why do you want to do that? And B, why is the coroner elected? I've grown up in our family, in the family funeral home here since I was 5 years old. That's when my parents bought the funeral home. So I don't want to say that, I've been around death my whole life, but it's been my life, and, it's just one of those things where you got to kind of educate the people on why you want to do it. And everyone gives me that look like, you're crazy, man. Why do why you want to be doing this? But, as I keep referring to it, the people of the county, they need it, and so the problems that we've kind of been seeing is, for the ones that have gone through and dealt with it is, the response from the coroners really over the last 4 years is, I don't want to say has declined, but what's kind of happened is they've gone to doing it over the phone. And being a coroner, you can't do it over the phone. You have to go there. You have to be there in person, not only for the families but for the law enforcement as well. I mean, when the coroners do it over the phone, order autopsies over the phone, release the bodies over the phone, you're really doing a disservice to the law enforcement, because you're putting the job of the coroner onto them. And their job is not to be the coroner. Their job is to be there as law enforcement, to do their investigations. And really the handling the deceased part of it's really the responsibility of the coroner. So too many times I think families have been kind of left out in left field because the coroner doesn't show up. There's questions that arrive from them that, when we make a transport, a lot of times law enforcement gives the families our phone number just because we were there on scene, we transported them. And so, the day after, 2-3 days after, they're calling us asking, hey, where's our loved one? What's going on? What do we do? And, if the kind of way that I look at it is, if I'm helping them through it now, why not try to do it in a different aspect?
And obviously you've been in the space your entire life, but you've in the recent history, especially. So I can ask you this question. Is the not responding thing, did that come out of COVID? Was that kind of like a COVID era thing that just stuck?
I don't know if it's so much that it was a COVID era thing. I think what's happened is it's one of them things that, when you do something once and twice and 3 times and all of a sudden it becomes a habit, I think that, maybe they get comfortable doing it over the phone. Maybe they're in a position where they can't respond and dispatch calls them and says, hey, we need a coroner to respond. And, they're not really in a place to do so. So they just say, well, instead of going to the scene, we'll order an autopsy over the phone. And again, in a lot of instances, it's a disservice, but not only that, but it puts a liability on the county. Because you never know what's going on at that scene. It might be a clear-cut case, but if you dive into it and you're there and you see what's going on, there's circumstances that arise sometimes that make you raise an eyebrow and say, okay, well, is that really what's going on, or do we need to really dig into this deeper? And like I said, it kind of turns into a liability for the county, for the law enforcement, for the transporters. So it's just, I want to be there. I want to be out there. I want to work with law enforcement, work with the families, and make sure that we're covering all the bases, because that's really what needs to happen.
This question is not intended to be rhetorical, but I know there are going to be folks listening or watching who have this pop into their head. What's the point of having a coroner if they aren't responding?
It's a great question. I've asked myself that question a lot of times, but, you have to have a coroner, just because, when an unattended death, happens, like I said, a lot of times there's questions that arrive. We're pretty fortunate here in our county that, our homicide rates are very, very low. We live in a safe county. We live in that, but the chances of things happening are still there, and you still have to do that due diligence to go out to do the job. And, like I said, if you do it over the phone, you're not going out, you're not, really performing the investigation that you should be performing. And again, that turns into liability, and it's something that's unnecessary that, can be resolved in an hour or 2 hours worth of work.
There may not be a lot of homicides in Ontario County, but throughout the entire region, we see there are plenty of car accidents, and unfortunately, more than we'd like to see, fatal car accidents, which are a big part of what the coroner has to respond to. When you're thinking about the implications for first responders, one of the issues that we've heard come up a couple times now is that first responders are among the most frustrated in Ontario County right now with that lack of response. Does that sort of match up with what you've been hearing?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So the lack of response, I mean, it delays a lot of things, you know what I mean? So a lot of times when you have like you said, a fatal car accident, the law enforcement has to go through and do their investigation, which sometimes takes several hours. And their goal is to make sure that they're doing their investigation, but they also need to get the roads back open. They need to get traffic flowing. They need to get that deceased out of there. And with that lack of response, you're just delaying that time frame a lot more. So, you might go from having a scene that you should be out on the scene 2 to 3 hours for law enforcement, but now they're getting stuck out there for 4 or 5, 6 hours just because nobody's responding to the scene, and it's not fair to them. It's not fair to the fire departments, the law enforcement that's out there. They have a job to do, and their job isn't to. I don't want to say this. I don't know how to word it, but their job is not to sit out on the scene for 5 hours, babysitting the scene to just waiting on somebody. Once their investigation's complete, they should have response. They should have somebody there to do the job, to take care of the deceased, take them to where they need to be, and to move on. So not only that, but they can get the community back in a normal flow.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. Obviously, you've worked in this space your entire life. You've been exposed to it your entire life. So how do you maintain your mental health in doing this work, and how would that translate to you being a coroner?
Yeah, so you gotta. It's one of those things that's hard. You know what I mean? It's definitely hard. I'm very fortunate. A lot of times when we have fatal accidents, when we have scenes that, that really stick with you. I work here with my dad, right? So we'll go out, we'll go to the scene, and we're able to come back to the funeral home and kind of talk through everything that we just went through, and a lot of people don't have that, like the first responders, the volunteer firemen, the, law enforcement. You go out and you see something as traumatic as a car accident or a suicide or things like that, and you go home and you don't have anyone to talk to about it. And that's kind of when it starts sticking, it starts to build up, where when we come home, we sit down, we have a conversation, and we just, hey, listen, this is what it is. And, I've gone and we've talked to therapists and we've done other things to try to kind of clear our head of that, what we just went through. But I'm going to be honest with you, unless you've been out to those scenes and you've been through it and you see it, it's very hard to engage with somebody else about it, because I don't want to say they give you the generic answer, but they do. If you haven't gone through it and you haven't witnessed it yourself, then it's hard to relate to somebody about it. So for me, I'm very fortunate. I'm able to come home, we have our conversations, we talk things through, and and unfortunately it's a part of life, and you can't focus on what you saw. You got to kind of focus on, listen, yeah, it might have been a horrific scene, but we just help them I don't want to say transition to their next phase, but we just help take care of them, in a respectful manner, and made sure that they were, everything was taken care of properly.
You mentioned response time. How much of a response time is how I've been having this conversation with folks, or trying to gauge it anyway. Yeah. Response time seems to be a subjective thing, depending on who you're talking to, right?
Yep.
One person might think 45 minutes is an appropriate response time. Another person might think 45 minutes is too long. Another person might think 2 hours is too long. How do you approach that? And what do you hear? Like, when you think of appropriate response time in a county like Ontario, which obviously, I'm thinking Phelps to Naples, that's a drive. That's a good drive. 100%. What is good response time?
So I think an hour is, our response when dispatch calls us right now to go make a removal is give us up to an hour, right? The coroners, the transporters of the county, we have families, we have a life. I don't want to say that, our focus isn't always on this, but, there's times when we're out and about. We could be grocery shopping. We could be at one of our kids' sporting events. So we tell everyone, give us up to an hour. Let us, get back to the funeral home. Let us get everything ready and ready to go. And just like you said, I mean, from Phelps to Naples is a 45-minute drive alone, and if that's the case, where we get a call, or you go even as far as Canadice, I mean, that's an hour drive. If you give us up to an hour, I mean, that's giving law enforcement their time to start, doing their investigation on the scene. But it's also an appropriate thing, because people know, man, if you're coming from Phelps and you got to go down to Canadice or Bristol or Naples, they know that you're not going to be there in 20 minutes. The way that I've always done it is, give me an hour, and and they understand that, people get that.
Number one skill that makes a good coroner, your perspective, what one you think is most important?
Compassion. Yep. The compassion part of it, because again, you're going into scenes where people were not expected to pass, right? Like I said, they haven't been on hospice. The family hasn't been with them for the last, couple days, weeks, going through the process with them. Most times it's somebody didn't show up to work, or somebody came home from work and they found their loved one, and they're in a state of shock, right? So when you go into a scene, you have to have that caring, you have to have that compassion towards them, and the patience to kind of guide them through it. Just because it's not something that, let's be real, death isn't something that people deal with on a daily basis. Or sometimes, people never deal with it, which is great. But for the ones that are there, you really have to have the patience, have the caring and compassion to walk them through step by step on what they should expect, what they should be doing, and help guide them through that process.
And finally, where can folks learn more about your campaign?
Yep. So if you go on to Facebook, I'm not on there personally, but I do have a coroner page. If you go on and search under Thomas Cheney for Ontario County Coroner, you can go to the About section. It's kind of got a little blurb about me, who I am, why I want to do this. Everything that we're doing, all the events that we're doing, everything's posted right on there. But you can go right on there. My cell phone number's on there. My email's on there. You can contact me any time of the day and night. I have a 1-year-old, so most times if it's 3 a.m, somebody has a question, I'm up giving them a bottle anyway. So, it does not matter. Time's not one of those things that really affect me. So yeah, contact me any time of the day and night, and I'd be more than happy to talk.
Tom, appreciate the time. Thanks for taking it today.
Yes, Josh, thank you so much.
That'll do it for this edition of FLX Today. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this one, check out the show on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to the FingerLakes1.com YouTube channel. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.